I'm going to stay in the chair if that's okay. I don't want to be too much entertainment today if I get up here and crash and burn. So, a little bit about me first, and then I want to talk about the U.S. Marshal Service and kind of what we do. I gave you the long version of my bio. Probably should have went with the short one there. But I spent my first career with the Tennessee Bureau of Investigation. Most of my career I was in either the Nashville headquarters office or over in West Tennessee. I grew up in West Tennessee. So probably thought that I was going to spend my entire career in the TBI and retire right there. And I spent about 19 years there. Had a great career, really enjoyed it. Different times in those days. I started my career in 1983, so I've been in this business for about 39 years now. So I've been around for a moment. So TBI's changed tremendously since those days. They've grown gigantically compared to the small number of agents we had back in those days. And a lot of those times back then, we worked alone, so it was, now they're working in teams. We worked alone a lot in those days, so very different times. So I had an opportunity to become the U.S. Marshal. The U.S. Marshal, there's 94 federal judicial districts in the United States, and they're all within state lines. So in Tennessee, there are 3 federal judicial districts, and it's east, middle, west. So I was actually living in West Tennessee at that time, and when a new president comes in, they have the opportunity to appoint a new U.S. attorney, which is your chief prosecutor on the federal side, and the U.S. Marshal for the district. So Fred Thompson was one of the U.S. senators at that particular time, and I actually had gotten to know him, and he came to me and asked if I had an interest in the appointment as the U.S. Marshal. So that's how that happened. One of the funny stories was that the U.S. Marshal at the time in West Tennessee, which is based out of Memphis, was a guy named Buck Wood, and I knew Buck. I'd actually been a task force officer for the Marshal Service during my career with TBI, and I'd been sworn in a lot of federal task forces by the Marshal, which I thought was a pretty neat thing, and now I get to do that. I swear in all these local officers for our federal task forces, FBI, Secret Service, DEA, ours, and various ATF and all the others. So I was going to be replacing Marshal Wood, and he was a really nice guy, easy guy to come in behind. And so the senator's office called me. Bill Frist was the other senator at the time who became a good friend of mine and still is to this day. And so the senators were going to make the announcement that they were recommending me to the president, because they don't make the nomination. The president makes the nomination. So I was going to be recommended to the president to be by the senators, because that's usually the way it works. It's by the senators if they're of the same party as the president. So and that's one reason I'm still here as Marshal under Joe Biden, because the 2 senators in Tennessee, Bill Hagerty and Marsha Blackburn, liked me and wanted me to stay here. So I'm still serving in the role, and the White House has shown no interest in changing me out. So I'm continuing to do this job, and I'm going to continue to do it until somebody tells me otherwise, or which could be my wife. So she did inform me that she would like to retire at the end of 2023. She says, so if you're still in the job, hint, hint, I'd like for you to retire too, so we can do some traveling. So I will probably follow the hint at the end of next year if I happen to still be in this position. Plus, I'll have 40 years in this career at that point, so that sounds like a pretty good round number. So anyway, Marshal Wood over in West Tennessee, the senators put out a press release that they were recommending to President George W. Bush at the time that I was going to be the U.S. Marshal for the Western District of Tennessee, based over in Memphis. So the Memphis Commercial Appeal, the big newspaper down there, a reporter calls me and wants to interview me for an article he's going to do for the next morning in the Commercial Appeal. So the next morning I get up and I look in the Commercial Appeal. I lived up in Jackson. I didn't live in Memphis. So I was looking at the Commercial Appeal, looked all through there, didn't see an article. And so I thought, well, maybe they didn't do it today, So but it wasn't there. Well, I'd always had this thing. People would call me, in the morning, sometimes say, "Hey, Dave, how you doing today?" And I say, "Hey, well, I'm not on the obituary page. I'm doing great today." So, I woke up, wasn't on the obituary page. The life's good, Well, I can't say that anymore. So Marshal Wood called me and he said, "Hey, Dave, I saw that the article in the paper that the senators had recommended you to the White House to be the new marshal. So it's finally becoming official." So I said, "Well, Marshal Wood, where'd you see it?" I looked all through the commercial appeal this morning. He goes, "Well, it's on the obituary page." So I opened it up, looked at the obituary page, and sure enough, there's all the dead folks. And across the bottom of the page, it says, "Jolley to be named U.S. Marshal for the Western District of Tennessee." So guess that was where they fitted in. So and then I said, "Well, I guess I can't tell people the same thing when they call now." But so I'm the survivor of the obituary page that's still here. So anyway. Little trivia about me. I made a little bit of history when I came back as marshal this time. I left, when President Obama was elected. I was still in office for a little while, but they were eventually going to replace me over there. One of the congressmen was seeking to put somebody else in. So I knew it was a matter of time. So, but then the TVA called me one day and was recruiting a new director of their police and security. And it was based in Knoxville, and said, "Well, you got to move to East Tennessee." Fantastic job. I moved up here. My wife and I had always traveled to East Tennessee and, vacation, did things, got cabins up in the Smokies and hiked and did all those kind of things back in those days. And so we always said, well, if you leave, take another job somewhere, East Tennessee would be a great place to go. So, because we grew up down in the flatlands of West Tennessee, which is flat as this floor. It's big farm country over there. So anyway, I had the opportunity, moved to East Tennessee 13 years ago. We live right outside of Knoxville there. Spent a few years with the TVA, and then when I left there, I went into the consulting world and worked for a lot of the big utility companies around the country, and really had no thought of coming back to be the U.S. Marshal till Senator Corker and Senator Alexander, now the U.S. senators that replaced Thompson and Friss, called me and said, "Hey, you want to make a comeback?" So I said, "Sure, it was a great job. I enjoyed it." So I came back 4 years ago. The rest is history. I'm still here as the U.S. Marshal and have thoroughly enjoyed this career. So a little piece of history that I mentioned there. I am one of only a couple of people in the history of the U.S. Marshals since the U.S. Marshal Service was created by the Judiciary Act in 1789 to be appointed by two different presidents in two different districts of the United States. Now, there have been marshals reappointed in the same district. For instance, the Middle Tennessee Marshal was the marshal under George W. Bush, and then he left, and then he came back as the marshal again in the same district, Middle Tennessee, under President Trump. So I'm one of the two that have pulled that one off. There are two or three. The historian says he knows it's less than 5. He thinks it's somewhere in the 2 to 4 range that's done that in history over time. So the other part was, I actually, before I was ever U.S. Marshal, I was in a movie called U.S. Marshals. And had no concept then that I was going to be the U.S. Marshal one day, but they were filming that movie with Tommy Lee Jones and Wesley Snipes and Robert Downey Jr. over in West Tennessee. There was a scene where they're in the swamp, they're chasing Wesley Snipes, the bad guy, through this swamp, which was Reelfoot Lake over in West Tennessee. They needed some extras to go play some police officer type roles. So they slapped a Kentucky State Police uniform on me and a big brim hat, and truthfully, that's the only uniform I've worn in practically 40 years of law enforcement, because I was always, wearing regular clothes, street clothes kind of investigator. So I was in that movie. I had about, there I went. That was my moment on the screen. But it was in U.S. Marshals, and I did get to meet those guys. It was a lot of fun. But that was before I was U.S. Marshal. And then I named my son. My son came along, and my wife wanted to like the name Marshall, and so she was gonna, and I wasn't Marshall yet, so we decided to make his middle name Marshall, so it was Clay Marshall. And so, you know, a little bit of destiny there, I guess, that I would end up being the Marshal one day. And every teacher, of course, Marshall is actually spelled with one L. A lot of people don't know that. A lot of people in my own law enforcement world don't know that. And so my son, he'd spell his name Marshal, and the teacher would say, "No, you left off an L." "No, I didn't." And he dealt with that in all of his elementary school years, you know. So anyway, I ended up becoming the U.S. Marshal. I've had a fantastic career. What do the Marshals do? So a lot of things, really. So we're a federal law enforcement agency just like FBI or DEA or ATF, all those guys. Everybody kind of has their lane, has a little bit of different responsibilities of what you do. So you know, we work with them on some things, but we do a lot of things that we do and they do, you know, that's very different from each other. I tell people a lot of times the Marshal is kind of like the big federal sheriff. So we're the kind of the sheriff's department for the federal government. So if FBI, DEA, or whoever it is goes out and arrests somebody today, they have to bring that person on a federal charge, they have to bring them to the Marshal. That's the way it's always been since the beginning in the Old West, and they're all through history. Bring them to the Marshal. We will book them in and process them there, take them in front of the federal magistrate judge on their charges, and then they belong to the Marshal. If the judge holds them without bond, they belong to the Marshal through this whole trial process until they're sentenced and sent off to the Federal Bureau of Prisons. So we manage a lot of prisoners here in the Eastern District of Tennessee, which the Eastern District of Tennessee is the largest geographic region of the 3 districts in Tennessee. 41 of the 95 counties are in this region. It starts right up here in Upper East Tennessee. It goes all the way down East Tennessee to Chattanooga. Then it cuts across the bottom of the state. Why, I don't know. It's a history thing. It goes all the way across all the way over to Shelbyville on the bottom part of the state. So it's kind of this long, weird shaped thing that really was part of the design when there was really one district, then 2 districts, then 3 districts as the state of Tennessee grew. It's kind of that history there. So we have on an average day, we probably have about 900 prisoners that are in the custody of the Marshal Service. We have 3 offices here in East Tennessee. The main office where I base out of most days is in Knoxville. We have an office in Chattanooga, federal courthouses in each of these offices where we are. And then our third one is Greenville. Greenville is our Upper East Tennessee regional office that covers basically from down around Sevier County all the way up to Tri-Cities. So I brought along Hector Dominguez today. Hector is new to our district. He is the supervisor for the Greenville regional office. He's only been here about 2 months. He's been with the Marshal Service, 16 years, Hector? And so anyway, he's trying to get to know the lay of the land and some of the folks, so wanted to get him out today and let you guys see him. But Hector's our new supervisor deputy marshal for the Greenville office. So busy district, 900 prisoners is a lot for what we're considered a medium-sized district. It's a lot. But we have a very busy U.S. Attorney's office here. Do we have more crime? No, than some of the other parts of the state? Probably not. It's just that we have a big territory, and a lot of the cases here are federal drug conspiracy type cases in the Eastern District. Chattanooga, it's a little more gang member type drug cases down in that city, which we don't have a lot of that up in this area. We see a lot of child pornography cases come through, bank fraud, bank robbery, those kind of things too. A lot of federal gun violation type cases. So court operations is one of our biggest things, because while they're in our custody, whichever prisoners have to go in front of the judge today, the supervisors have got to make sure that those prisoners get to the courthouse for the day, and then they get in front of the judge, and the deputy marshals will carry them in front of the judge, stay with them in the courtroom, and then back out till they're transported back out. We do not own jails. One of the big things I tell people, the big difference between me and the county sheriff, we don't own jails. which can be problematic at times because I got to house these prisoners somewhere. So we house them, we lease space from some of the county sheriff's departments. And there's some prisons that allow us, we have prisoners in this district that are actually out of the district because we don't have enough jail space because some of the jails are overcrowded, so we don't have enough jail space to keep them all here. So we actually have prisoners in 6 or 7 states. I can't remember the number, but we have them in Kentucky, we have them in Tennessee, we have them up in Virginia, we have them over in North Carolina, we have them in Georgia, we have them in Alabama. So we have prisoners kind of spread around in different places and got to get them in, So the big juggle for Hector and the other supervisors on any given day is trying to get all these prisoners scheduled in and move them from one jail to the other and all those kind of things. I'm glad I don't own jails, but it is problematic that we do not own jails. We used to put a lot of them in private facilities like Core Civic, formerly known as CCA. We would keep some in the private facilities because we just couldn't get enough space from the others, but the Biden administration eliminated that when they came in and made a little bit of a challenge for us, so we're having to work around that on any given day. But that's one of the big things, prisoner operations that the deputy marshals are doing on any given day. The part that the deputy marshals like best is the fugitive operations, because we often say that's the sexy part of the job, because we have a fugitive task force. Some of the local departments will have people that we will swear in as deputy marshals for these task forces. They go out. We work a lot of cases with them. Some of them are federal cases, some are state cases. The Department of Justice, one of our goals is to assist local departments, state departments on violent crimes. So if they have a fugitive, it might be the Tennessee Bureau of Investigation might call us and they've got a fugitive they're looking for on a TBI top 10 on a murder case and the guy's on the run. It might be the Sullivan County Sheriff's Department is looking for somebody and they're needing help, and so our guys are out helping look for the fugitives, and we chase them from here to the other side of the world in some cases. And Hector's done a lot of international cases in his career. So we chase them wherever they go and we bring them back from where they go. That's kind of the fun part of the job that everybody really likes doing. There's other things that the Marshal Service has, asset forfeiture. So if, let's say the DEA goes out and seizes houses and cars and all those kind of things on some big drug conspiracy or something, then that becomes the property of the U.S. Marshal for management until the court disposes of it. So we're managing different properties and things on any given day. We may be, I think right now we probably have around $16 million worth of different assets that we're managing through the disposition process. And if that's let's say it's a business that we've seized for some reason, we've got to kind of keep that up so it doesn't lose its value during the time so it can be resold if it's awarded to the feds. My wife hates me for this one because when I was over in West Tennessee, TBI, FBI, and several federal agencies did this big joint operation where they seized 5 strip clubs in the city of Memphis. So I had 5 strip clubs. And so we had to keep these strip clubs. They closed them down, but I had to manage the property so it didn't run down because we don't want it to lose value. So when it resells, and sometimes it might go back to them. Sometimes courts award it back to them. So, we don't want to have to pay them extra money because we let the property run down. So I was in my Sunday school class one Sunday morning, and so we're sitting there, and we'd start off, and we kind of have a little time, where everybody kind of tell what they did this week and stuff. Everybody always wanted to hear what I did for some reason, I don't know. So this particular week, I said, well, I see, what am I doing right now? Well, I'm managing I'm in the strip club management business now. My wife put one right in my rib cage there, with her elbow, and said, "You can't tell people that." So, but hey, everybody in Sunday school class seemed to get a good kick out of it. So we had strip clubs. You get some interesting things. I tell people, I tell the federal agencies, just please don't bring me anything I got to feed. So sometimes they'll try to seize livestock, and I'm like, please don't do that. Now we do get dogs from these dogfighting operations sometimes, and we actually have a place that's down here over here in East Tennessee. It's down south of here that manages a lot of these dogs that are going through. And, it's a lot of pit bulls and things. So we will get those sometimes, but it's not a lot of fun getting things that you have to feed. So that's another part of our day-to-day operation. And then we don't really get that involved with this, but the Marshal Service manages the Federal Witness Protection Program. And a lot of people don't know that, because if you watch movies, a lot of times you think the FBI does, and the FBI they may put people in that program, but they don't run that program. We do. When I was over in West Tennessee, one of our regional witness protection offices was there where I was, and so we did support their details when they would have I used to call them kitty visits sometimes. It was usually they're going to bring the family to visit with the guy that's in federal witness protection, because it's usually a divorce situation. So I'd have to put deputies to take them to the zoo for Saturday or something like that. So we're involved in those kind of things. Those are kind of our primary things that we're doing on a day-to-day basis. So Hector, you think anything that I might have skipped over real quick in some of those? So that's kind of the big piece. Been doing this a long time, going to do it a little bit longer. I know you probably got a few questions. I grew up as a bit of a history buff. I still am a history buff. I love the Old West history and the Marshals and all those kind of things. And for those of you that might be venturing west in the next year or so, there's a U.S. Marshals Museum. We're opening a national museum in Fort Smith, Arkansas. I actually served on the Director's Advisory Committee, the director for the Marshal Service, once upon a time when they were picking the locations, and we ended up picking Fort Smith because of the history. So I'm sure there's no John Wayne fans in here, but I grew up as a John Wayne fan and Marshall Dillon and all those guys, So if you watch the John Wayne movies, when he was the marshal and he got sent out into the territory to bring the guy back, he always brought him back to the hanging judge in Fort Smith, Arkansas. So there is so much history there in Fort Smith about the Marshals, and so they're opening this museum. I've been over there, looked at. It looks like it's going to be very beautiful, and we're all kind of excited about seeing that, and I hope to get there. They're saying maybe late this year, early next year, they will be opening the U.S. Marshals Museum there in Fort Smith, right off Interstate 40, so if you're traveling west. I think that's about all I've got. What kind of questions do you guys have for me? Got one back here.
I wonder if you want to comment about your cooperation with local county sheriffs and the process of all the things that you do.
Work closely with all the county sheriffs. I've been in this business so long, I probably know all 95 of them by name and face, and I'd say that's true. I really do. I grew up with a lot of these guys. When I was with TBI, when I was an investigator and I'm out there working a homicide or something, some of these guys were the local investigator then, and now they're the sheriff, and I went up and they went up, and so I just know them from all the years of being in this business. I do attend the regular, their quarterly Sheriff's Association meetings, so I can hang out with these guys and keep up those relationships. They have people on our task force, our fugitive task force. Rent space in their jails for these prisoners. So good relationships with the sheriffs until the FBI indicts one, and then we have to go arrest them, and then it's not a good relationship anymore. And we have had to do that plenty of times. When I was with TBI back in the 80s, early 90s, we indicted several sheriffs on cases that we worked, so I had to arrest a few of those guys. But these days seem to have a pretty good crop of sheriffs. Things have improved quite a bit. Got a good group. So, yes, sir.
How many people do you have working out of the Greenville office?
Out of the Greenville office, there are 6 deputy U.S. Marshals, 1 administrative assistant, and the supervisor deputy there that covers this area. Wished I had about at least 5 more people, but because I could sure use them. So, yes, sir.
The overcrowding of jails seems to be a hot topic throughout, not just Tennessee, but all over the country. Is that impacting your operation?
Oh, absolutely. That's one of the struggles we deal with every day, because if the sheriff calls me and says, we're at a point right now, we can't take any more federal prisoners in, then I gotta figure out where I'm gonna put them, so I'm gonna have to put them in somebody else's jail. And so that is a regular struggle for the supervisors who really, they're on the phone all the time with the sheriff's departments and things, how many, can you take 5 prisoners today, do you have space? So, because all the jails are overcrowded. Crime, unfortunately, is taken a big upturn the last couple of years, particularly violent crime, and so and we didn't do ourselves any favors by letting a lot of people out during COVID, because now they're all back. So we're dealing with a lot of the same folks. One thing I will note is, as we were arriving here today, got the phone call that the Roe versus Wade was overturned. The decision was overturned, which we were kind of expecting soon. Well, I mean, we knew it was coming soon, and we were kind of bracing ourselves for that. We, a lot of times, will put details, send deputy marshals on a detail to cover the federal judges. So if any federal judge gets a threat against them, we're responsible for working the threat investigation and protecting the federal judges. So we've had details on all the Supreme Court justices during this, ever since the leak happened. And so we're kind of curious what this afternoon's going to be like around the country. I'm quite certain there will be major protest in D.C., and at the justices' homes, and probably in Knoxville. We'll see what this looks like today. So that's an impactful thing for us. A few days ago, there was a guy that went to Justice Kavanaugh's house and was outside with guns and stuff, and he ran into the deputy marshals there, and fortunately made a good decision that he wasn't going to take action of what he came there to do, and ended up turning himself over to them. But who knows what would have happened if the deputy marshals hadn't have been at Justice Kavanaugh's house. So we're really monitoring the events of this afternoon. So
across our southern border, there's immigrants that are called gotaways because they've never had a chance to apprehend them. They're out off into the interior. Do you all do any assistance in that area?
Well, let's see if I understand your question there. So you talk about like somebody that's been charged with a crime in the U.S. that's down there, or
somebody who's come
immigrants?
across the border, that they've eluded the border patrol agents, and they're now off in the interior of the United States.
Oh, in the U.S. Not really, because I mean those are immigration violations. We don't do a lot of work with the immigration violations. I mean, we see the immigration guys coming and going sometimes, because sometimes they will charge them with a crime other than a border violation. So we will see them coming and going from our office occasionally. But we do support details at the border, because it's right now things at the border, things were kind of calm. Actually had calmed down there where, used to, back early on in the Trump administration, our offices down on the border were slammed processing people. So we were having to send deputies down there. That kind of slowed down where it wasn't a lot of that there towards the end. Now it's back, so we're having to support details at the border again, which impacts us on a daily operation, because when headquarters calls and says, hey, DOJ wants you to send deputies to support a detail on the justices, a detail at the border, or a high threat trial in San Francisco or wherever it is. Well, no, not San Francisco. They don't prosecute people. Let's say Dallas or something like that. So anyway, we'll have to give up a deputy to send to them, and we're trying to keep our courts covered here too and do our day-to-day operations, but at the same time support some of these national things that are going on. So it can be I tell everybody all the time, the office supervisors have the toughest job in the Marshal Service, because they're having to juggle personnel and prisoners every day. So.
Yes, sir. Your hierarchy, in other words, who do you report to and who is over all of the marshals?
So the Marshal Service, just like FBI, DEA, everybody else has a director. So the Marshal, the 94 Marshals report up to the director. The director reports to the Attorney General and then to the President. So, yep.
You go into the DOJ.
We are under DOJ, yes. We're a DOJ component, yes.
I noticed I believe I heard that one of our local jails had to quit taking federal prisoners because they can't get help. I assume that, your pay scales are higher than what counties pay, obviously, but, what are your staffing levels like and open positions, et cetera? And I know it's a struggle, but.
Well, the struggle for us is that we can't get people hired fast enough and in the job fast enough because we lose as many people to retirements and things in a given year, and then we feel like we're constantly backfilling positions. So I wish we had our own academy, but we share an academy down at the Federal Law Enforcement Training Center at Glencoe, Georgia, with some other federal agencies. So you're always vying for class time. So in a given year, we can usually maybe run about 6 new deputy marshal academies down there. We need to be running twice that many in a given year to keep up with some of the numbers that leave and trying to get new people hired. We have no trouble recruiting in the Marshal Service. We're probably the only agency that I know of that really don't have to worry about recruiting because it seems like every local officer out there wants to be a U.S. Marshal one day, so we don't have much trouble recruiting. We got tons of people who want the job. It's just getting them hired and getting them trained and getting them in the office before somebody else leaves. So that's one of the struggles for us. So we do pay well, and it's a good job. So this is kind of one of the gold jobs for a lot of guys that want to go into the law enforcement world, and gals. Local departments, one of the struggles we lost Carter County Jail just recently, which was one of our better run jails. I mean, they did a fantastic job. The sheriff lost the election. Part of the problem over there in Carter County was that, and this is a problem for 95 sheriffs right now, I can tell you, and it's a problem for every sheriff probably in the United States. Nobody wants to work right now, and for whatever reason that we've run into this situation after COVID that people don't want to work. Every restaurant around can't hire, every factory can't hire. So one of the problems with the jails is, they don't pay jailers very much money, $12, $13, $14 an hour in a lot of those smaller counties, say including Carter County. And the sheriff had been arguing with the county commission for quite some time that we've got to raise pay, and no, we're not going to give you the money. So there was this bickering back and forth between the sheriff and the county commission over that. They were paying $12 an hour. Well, you can go here into Arby's and make $15 an hour right now, and so why be a jailer and deal with inmates when you can go to Chick-fil-A or somewhere else and not have to deal with inmates and make more money, because that's the situation we've run into these days. And so it's hard for the sheriffs to recruit jailers right now, and they're all struggling with a shortage of manpower in those areas. We do pay, when we rent space, we pay good money. And for a local sheriff, I would want a contract. If I had any kind of space available to me at all, I'd want a contract with the U.S. Marshals, because we're going to pay better than the state. They will keep some state prisoners there, but we pay a good bit more money than the state does. And other than that, when you're running a jail, you're just losing money. That's all it is. It costs the county money to run a jail. There's no revenue coming in. You're just housing these people, and it's costing you this much money a day to house a prisoner. So running a jail costs a county money. And we're the only ones around that are actually paying the sheriff to house prisoners so they can make some money off of us. Carter County was taking in about $1.2 million a year just from me, paying them to house prisoners over there that they will not have here in the near future, and they're going to have to figure out where they're going to get $1.2 million because they kind of had gotten to like it. So, that's one of the challenges sometimes for us. So, yes, sir.
Are you in relation to Kelly Jolley?
No, I get asked that a good bit. My wife loves Kelly because she's a big Lady Vols basketball fan. My wife played college basketball for UT Martin, and where Pat Summitt went to school. So she's a big Lady Vols fan. Goes to some of the games and all, and is very high on Kelly. But no, we're not related. She actually spells her name slightly different because it was Jolley. Mine has an E in it, so it's Jolley. So.